Three Hopes' story isn't just some spin-off of the immaculate four-pronged chronicle of Three Houses. It charges onto Switch and declares itself the worthy sequel of the best game of 2019. A little background before we get into the thicker things here. Fire Emblem Three Houses was my game of the year in 2019, and I played that game 3 times. Yes, there are 4 routes in Three Houses, and the one I neglected to play was the church route, because as much as I love Jeremy Lee, I just can't sympathize, support, or fight for a church that forces its ideals onto others and criminalizes non-believers and brands them heretics. America! The point is, I'm familiar with the entire cast of Three Houses, and I absolutely adore nearly every unit. Yet, realistically, it would be a poor use of my time to play through every route in Three Hopes for this review, so I was left with a difficult choice of whose story I should experience. And who knows, maybe I can re-review the story from the perspective of a different house someday. I settled on Golden Deer, as they're the most consistently quality house in the game. Claude is the only house leader not stuck up his own ass, and can be a calming and friendly presence to talk to, and a valiant leader that inspires me to fight on the battlefield. The unlikely friendship of diffident Ignatz and rambunctious Raphael is always a welcome dynamic no matter the topic of conversation. Lysithia's intolerance of being seen as immature counterproductively makes her even cuter. On top of the fact she's an absolute insane damage dealer, it just makes her all the more amazing. Lorenz is more misguided rather than elitist. While he does see commoners as weaker, he feels the need to protect them instead of conquering them, though his attitude still makes my skin crawl. The most shocking turnaround character in this game, for me, was Leonie. It turns out you can appreciate someone much more when their singular focus isn't to have sex with your dad. She felt more like her own character, with her own hopes and dreams, rather than the anime version of Natalie Portman in Leon the Professional. And she felt more like a true friend, as she had the same aspirations as Shiz. And rounding out the Golden Deer is the precious Marianne and Hilda. They have the same dynamic as Ignatz and Raphael, but the key difference here is that they are both adorable and would be so happy together, and I may or may not have a fanfiction account where such an event transpires. I have to especially give credit to Xanthi Hune, as it's not easy to be the best girl in 2 JRPGs with top tier waifu selections. I wouldn't say that Golden Deer has my favourite characters, those would be Dimitri, Felix, and Edelgard, but it's the most consistent, especially in Three Hopes, which completely turned around my least favourite Leicester leader, Leonie. But you could find all that in a review of Fire Emblem Three Houses, and we're here to talk about the story of Three Hopes, which hits all the same beats as Three Houses. Students at a monastery, war breaks out, pick a faction. There are 2 significant differences here. One of them is the minimization of the academy phase, which you could interpret as the developer saying, if you haven't played Three Houses, get out now, this game will mean nothing to you. An understandable mentality, but it does make me feel bad for the Musou fans who haven't played the 100-hour games like Three Houses, Breath of the Wild, or Persona 5, or watched the entirety of One Piece. The second change is that there's a fully voiced and scripted main character. Shiz is already an improvement over Byleth, because they're actually a character with motivations, hopes, dreams, personalities, and relationships. I love how by putting me in the shoes of Shiz, I get to interact with the pre-established characters that I love in a new light. There was always an air of respect in the Three Houses support conversations, because I was a teacher, their superior. I was quite literally in charge of these kids and could flunk or expel them whenever I wanted. Shiz just feels like one of the guys/girls. I felt like the characters were able to open up to me a lot more, and they weren't afraid to tell me what they were thinking. It was so cool having Lysithia actually get into a full-blown argument with me, That's something that would have never happened in the original game. Shiz, as a character, is still very malleable, depending on her route. Part of the reason I chose Golden Deer was that, in the original, that was the route that provided the most backstory to Byleth and the Progenitor God. So I assumed that I'd have a lot more to say about Arval. Although I think that might have been in the true ending, which I missed out on, because Claude refused to run back to the goddamn base and chose to take down every little punching bag before he'd start moving. But that's in the past, and more importantly, a gameplay critique. While there is very little in the way of story in between the main chapters, I'd like to highlight the paralogue battles, which feel like a filler episodes in an anime. Not bad filler like Bleach, but good filler like One Piece. Short, bite-sized stories that highlight a character or plot point that's not really relevant, but still fun to explore. It's a shame that your only real incentive to do them is the narrative, but that's what I'm here to talk about. Fire Emblem Three Houses was my first tactical strategy game, but as I played Three Hopes, I'm beginning to wonder if that's what drew me to it. Don't get me wrong, I think Houses is superior to Hopes in most ways, but I found myself just as engaged this time around as I was on my first playthrough of Houses. Three Houses may have been the genesis for my love of tactical RPGs, but without likable, real, relatable characters, all those interlocking systems and masterfully made maps would have all been for naught. Fire Emblem Three Hopes isn't just some cheap spin-off. Instead, it's a love letter to anyone who likes Three Houses. It tells an AU story that has all the same heart-throbbing moments of cutting down your former friends as the original. And as far as class reunions go, this one's gotta be the best in history.